Hi everyone, welcome back and thanks so much for clicking on this video. Did you see that before there? Wow. So today I'm showing you how I do makeup on myself. I am not the best at this. If anyone that knows me already knows that I don't really do makeup properly on myself. Give me someone else's face to do any day and I'm right there, but with my own it's a different story. Anyway, keep watching if you want to see how I created that look that I showed at the start. So to start with, I always start with eyebrows. I'm using a MAC brow pencil in the shade Spiked. I've drawn the structure line underneath the brow to start with, so that's that kind of straight, full, structured strength line that you saw go straight underneath the brow to start with. We want that as bold and strong and straight and defined as possible. And then I take the pencil across the top of the eyebrow, concentrating on the arch and the end of the brow mainly, and then the closer towards the front of the brow that I go, the lighter my hand is. So you'll see here I'm adding the structure line in, following it around the arch and bringing it nice and thin on the tail and just extending that slightly as well. Then I'm working on the top part of the tail, top part of the arch, and then slowly edging towards the front of the brow. I won't draw the top of the brow on fully when we get to the front of the brow because we want that to be a little bit more faded. So as you can see, I'm just using light feathery strokes with very light pressure towards the front of the brow to make it much feathery and lighter and faded there. And then I am flicking upwards from that strength line to fill in the rest of the brow. I'm going in with a clean disposable mascara wand just to brush through and distribute the product evenly throughout. And then I go back with the pencil and add in any areas that are sparse and that need a little bit more definition. Then I'm going to grab the absolute holy grail of eyeshadow bases. This is the P. Louise eyeshadow base. Today I'm using the shade 03. I'm using that on a MAC 252 brush, getting as much product onto that brush as I can and sharpening the tip right up, taking my time to then carve underneath that strength line that we drew in on the eyebrow. Then I'm filling that over the whole of the lid, switching to a fluffy brush and patting that in. This product can be quite wet and patchy until it is patted in and set. Then it should turn a semi-matte consistency. And then taking this peachy transition shade from the Doll Beauty eyeshadow palette onto a fluffy brush, and I'm focusing that into the socket of the eye. So that is kind of going around in a semicircle shape in the socket of the eye and building that up. Then taking a smaller brush, the darker colour we go, the smaller brush we go. So this is a more dense brush and I'm patting in a darker colour from the eyeshadow palette, more defined into the socket, and then taking another clean, fluffier brush and just softly blending out those edges so the two colours merge together. We don't want to see any lines where you can see where one colour starts and the other one finishes, so that's why we just take our time to softly, and that is the key word here, softly blend those together. Then I'm switching to a pigment that comes in this shadow palette. It's Humbug by Doll Beauty again, using the NYX glitter primer on a soft fluffy brush and patting that glitter primer all over the lower part of the lid. I'm not being specific on this because I don't mind if it goes a little bit messy. With that same brush, just flipping it over, taking that Humbug pigment and patting it over the whole lower part of the lid. I don't want this to be structured, so I've not cut a crease. So I am slightly going over the edge of that shadow and then taking back the fluffy eyeshadow brush and going back over that edge as well, just so the pigment and the shadow merge together nicely and there's kind of a soft blend there without it being a harsh cut. Taking that same brush with some of that darker shadow and just in a diagonal motion patting that across the lower lash line to give that a bit of depth at the base of the lashes. That's done, so now to match up the other side of the eye, I'm now grabbing a MAC eyeliner pencil in the shade Feline, and that is going in the waterline on both of my eyes just to add a bit of darkness and definition. Then I will add mascara to the top and bottom lashes using a disposable mascara wand just to make sure we're being as hygienic as we can. And then that will leave me ready to pop on some false lashes. The lashes I'm using today are from Prima Lash in the style Sis. These are my absolute favourite lashes, and they are my go-tos when I do wear lashes, which isn't that regularly, but when I do wear them, these are the ones that I love. Give the band a little wiggle, it just stops it from being so stiff, and it will make it the same shape as your eye to then put on quite easily. So I've put glue on there. We use the Eldora glue, that's our favourite. I've just placed the centre of the lash onto my lashes, and then I'm now squeezing on the inner and outer corners just to make sure they're stuck. So the trick with this is to apply the glue, put the lashes to the side for kind of 4 or 5 minutes just to make sure that they are as tacky as possible before applying them, and it will make your job much easier. I'm now going to grab my Luxe blender and move on to one of my favourite parts, the base. I'm giving that a squeeze in the water just to make sure it's fully absorbed as much water as possible, giving it a really good squeeze out so it is only damp, and then it will be expanded, super soft and ready to blend flawlessly. So I really think this is the part where the real magic happens, and I will start transforming into a completely different person, which is great. I'm using the Studio Fix MAC foundation. This one is in NC37, and using a spatula to distribute that over the skin, and then the blender just to pat that in. So we don't use any swiping or wiping motions with the blender, it is patting and pushing that into the skin. Always go on the ears and behind the ears and down the neck as well, just so everything blends seamlessly in together. Now moving on, I'm using my favourite concealer, which is the EX1 Cosmetics Delete Fluid. This is in the shade 02. With a fluffy duo fibre eyeshadow brush, I'm placing that underneath my eyes, onto my forehead, on my chin and down the centre of my nose, just to give the highlighting effect. I do use this in a lighter shade just to brighten up everything. Then I'm grabbing the Revolution foundation stick. This is in the shade F13, and I'm using that to contour. That's going underneath my cheekbones, on my temples, around the hairline on the forehead. And then I'll grab my blender again to blend in all of those areas together. I start with the concealer areas because they're lighter, and I don't want the foundation, the darker foundation areas, smudged into these brighter areas that I want to keep nice and light. So starting on those concealer areas, and then with a different part of the blender, I will move on to blending out just by tapping over the top of those darker contoured concealer areas. To make sure I'm getting a really flawless finish and getting right into areas and close to areas, I switch back to my brush just to get right underneath the eyes, into the inner corners of the eyes. I also use that to get in any nooks and crannies around the nose, in the chin, anywhere like that you just need a bit more precision. I then need to set those lighter areas in place. The concealer goes on more movable areas of the face, so normally the centre of the face, which means it can be prone to creasing or moving. We don't want it to move, so I'm using the RCMA No Colour powder on the flat part of the blender and pressing that loose powder on top of those concealed areas. Same goes for the contoured areas. We want to set that and just intensify it slightly. So using a brush and MAC Mineralized Skin Finish Natural in the shade Dark Tan, I'm going over those contoured areas to intensify that contour. I love blusher, and I know that not everyone does, but I think it's a necessity to brighten up your face and just make everything come to life a little bit. So I'm using that same brush in Rockateur Benefit Blusher. Later on, I also did add the Jordana Tisha Cosmetics blusher in the shade Prom Queen, but that isn't on camera. But I added that just for a bit more colour and a bit more of like a highlighty glow. Now I'm taking a soft brush and brushing over all of those areas that I placed that powder on earlier. It was kind of half baking for a little bit, so any of the excess powder that still sat there, I've just brushed away. Now I'm sharpening underneath that contour. This is actually quite a drag technique, so this isn't something that I would do very strongly or all the time, but just on myself, I'm sharpening up that contour by adding that RCMA powder underneath the contour to make sure that it's quite high up and defined and sharp. So placing that powder, that can sit for a little bit and then I'll come back and dust that off later. Now for the mother of all highlighters. This is the Dole Beauty Shine Bright highlighter, one of my absolute favourites. I don't think you can beat it for the intensity of how strong the highlight is. It builds up so nicely as well. I use that on a smaller brush because I want it to be quite intense. If you wanted it to look more diffused and natural and a subtle glow, then I would suggest using a bigger, fluffier brush. You can't control where it's going as much, but you'll get more of a softer application. After highlighter, I always go back in with the blusher brush just to go over any edges to make sure everything's diffused and blended together. The worst thing with highlighter is in certain lights, people looking at you and seeing that you've got just a stripe of highlighter. It's the worst, so always make sure you go in and blend afterwards. Then going back with that soft fluffy brush and getting rid of any excess powder that was used to sharpen up that contour. Now I'm going in with Whirl lip liner pencil from MAC and just defining the edge of my lip line. Then I'm going ahead and filling in the whole of my lip with this. This is what I do day to day normally, just as a natural, kind of long lasting everyday lip. It does make it much more long lasting, so you can do this for a night out or all day and then put a lipstick or a gloss on top as well if you prefer. So I've just left it for this video with the lip liner, as you can see, but for the picture, for the thumbnail, I have added a Dole Beauty gloss on top as well, which I really liked. So this is the finished look. I hope you liked it. I think it's quite a transformation. Let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Bye guys.